The jewelry box felt wrong the moment I picked it up. Too light. My fingers fumbled with the velvet lid as Sarah lounged against my bedroom doorframe, scrolling through her phone. Empty. The blue satin where Margaret's sapphire pendant should have rested stared back at me like an accusation. "Oh, that old thing." Sarah's voice carried casual indifference. "I sold it last week. Needed the money for Cancun." My knees nearly buckled. That necklace was my final anniversary gift to Margaret before cancer stole her 2 years ago. "You sold your mother's necklace?" The words came out strangled. Sarah was already turning away, laugh tinged with irritation. "Relax, Dad. It was just collecting dust." My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, racing through downtown Rochester toward Goldstein's pawn shop on East Avenue. Sarah's words echoed in my mind. Just collecting dust. That sapphire pendant had rested against Margaret's heartbeat through 37 years of marriage. She wore it during our daughter's birth, during her father's funeral, during her first chemotherapy session. The last time I'd clasped it around her neck, she could barely lift her head from the hospice pillow, but she'd smiled and whispered that she felt beautiful. The bell above Goldstein's door chimed as I burst in, probably looking like a madman. Samuel Goldstein glanced up from behind the counter, his weathered face shifting from professional courtesy to genuine concern. We'd known each other peripherally for years through the Rotary Club, though I'd never imagined I'd need his services. "I'm Bird-1. Gibson, everything all right?" He set down the watch he'd been examining. "My daughter sold you a necklace, sapphire pendant on a gold chain. I need it back." The words tumbled out desperately. "I'll pay whatever you want. Triple what you gave her." Samuel's expression softened with understanding. He pulled out a thick ledger, running his finger down entries. "Sarah Reynolds, correct? Yes, she came in 5 days ago. Let me retrieve it from the safe." Those 3 minutes stretched like hours. When Samuel returned the familiar blue velvet box in his hands, made my throat close up. He opened it carefully, revealing Margaret's necklace intact, the deep blue sapphire catching the overhead lights, just as it used to catch the candlelight during our anniversary dinners. "Magnificent piece," Samuel murmured, lifting it with the reverence of someone who understood craftsmanship. "Victorian era, if I'm not mistaken. The metalwork is exquisite." He held it up to his jeweler's lamp, then paused, squinting. "Now that's interesting." "What?" I leaned forward, heart racing for new reasons. Samuel retrieved a thin tool from his workbench. "See this tiny seam along the edge of the setting? This medallion opens. It's designed to hold something." With practiced precision, he worked the mechanism. A soft click, and the sapphire setting swung open on a hidden hinge. My world tilted. Inside the secret compartment lay a tightly rolled piece of paper no bigger than my thumbnail and a small brass key. Samuel carefully extracted both with tweezers, his movements delicate as a surgeon's. "I've seen these before," he said quietly. "Victorian secret keeper pendants. Wealthy families used them to hide important information. Your wife never mentioned this." I shook my head mutely, staring at the impossibly small scroll. Margaret had worn this necklace for decades, and I'd never known. She'd never said a word. With trembling fingers, I unrolled the paper. Written in Margaret's precise handwriting were GPS coordinates and 2 words, First National. "That's a safety deposit box key," Samuel observed. "See the number engraved, Box 573. She never told me about any safety deposit box." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "We shared everything, every account, every investment." Samuel studied my face with the wisdom of someone who'd seen countless human dramas play out in his shop. "Sometimes the people we love keep secrets to protect us, Gibson. Whatever your wife hid, she had her reasons. How much do I owe you?" I reached for my wallet, but Samuel waved me off. Sarah took $2,000 for it. Highway robbery for a piece this valuable, but she seemed desperate. He closed the pendant carefully, placing it back in the box. Tell you what, I'll hold it for 24 hours, no charge. Go find out what your wife wanted you to know. Then come back and we'll settle up. Fair. I could only nod, overwhelmed by his kindness. As I turned to leave, Samuel called after me. Gibson. In 40 years in this business, I've learned that messages from the departed usually come right when we need them most. Your wife knew what she was doing. The drive to First National Bank passed in a blur of memories and questions. Margaret had always handled her jewelry carelessly, leaving rings on bathroom counters and earrings scattered across dressers. But this necklace, she'd treasured it worn. It constantly kept it in its special box. Now I understood why. She'd been guarding a secret, wearing it like armor against her heart. What could have been so important that she'd hidden it, even from me? We'd weathered everything together. Job losses, family deaths, Sarah's teenage rebellions, the grinding exhaustion of her cancer treatments. I'd held her hair during chemo, changed her bandages, learned to cook her special diet. We'd made every medical decision together, discussed every treatment option, until our voices grew hoarse. What secret could have survived such intimate transparency? First National Bank's marble lobby felt appropriately tomb-like for whatever revelation awaited. The coordinates Margaret had left weren't just random numbers, I realized, checking my phone's GPS. They led to this exact branch, the one where we'd opened our first joint account as nervous newlyweds. Everything she did had meaning layers of intention I was only beginning to uncover. The branch manager, a young woman who looked barely older than Sarah, examined the key with professional interest. This is one of our older safety deposit box keys. The box would have been registered separately from your regular accounts. Let me check our records. She typed efficiently, then frowned. I show a box 573 registered to Margaret Ann Patterson. That's not your wife's name. Her maiden name, I said softly. She used it for her writing before we married. I'll need to verify your authorization to access it. Do you have documentation? My heart sank. Of course there would be obstacles. But then I remembered the power of attorney documents in my filing cabinet at home, the ones we'd updated during her illness. I can bring paperwork tomorrow. Actually, the manager said, reading further, you're listed as the authorized signatory. She added you. She scrolled down 3 months before her passing. You just need photo ID. 3 months before. When she could barely hold a pen, when every movement was agony, she'd made sure I could access this box. My hands shook as I signed the entry log, following the manager into the vault's cool silence. The box was larger than I'd expected. Inside, neat folders lay stacked with Margaret's characteristic organization. The top folder bore a label in her handwriting, for Gibson, read first. Underneath, more folders with cryptic labels, evidence, timeline, PI reports, legal documents. But it was the sealed envelope beneath everything that made my blood run cold. Written across it in Margaret's shaking script, open only if Sarah betrays Gibson's trust. I sank into the provided chair, the weight of Margaret's foresight crushing. She'd known. Somehow she'd known our daughter would betray me too. But betray me how? What had she already done that Margaret felt compelled to gather evidence? With unsteady hands, I opened the first folder. A letter in Margaret's handwriting dated just 4 months before her death. My dearest Gibson, if you're reading this, then Sarah has done something to hurt you, and you've finally found the necklace's secret. I'm sorry for the deception, but I couldn't bear to burden you with this knowledge while I was alive. You had enough pain watching me fade away. Our daughter is sick, my love, though not in any way medicine can cure. The enclosed documents will explain everything. Please remember as you read them that she is still our baby girl. But sometimes love means preparing for the worst. while hoping for the best. All my love, Margaret. The next document was a bank statement I'd never seen before. Margaret's treatment fund, the special account we'd established for experimental therapies, not covered by insurance. I remembered it well. We'd liquidated investments, sold her mother's antique furniture, done everything to gather the $100,000 the doctors said might buy her more time. But the statement showed massive withdrawals I didn't recognize. $50,000 gone in chunks over 2 months. The dates aligned with when Margaret had decided against the experimental treatment, claiming she wanted to focus on quality of life instead. I'd supported her choice, held her as she cried about accepting fate. But now, the next page was a photocopied check. Margaret's signature, but something was off. I'd seen her sign her name thousands of times, and this wasn't right. Too steady, too precise for someone whose hands shook from chemo. The memo line read, "Treatment costs," but the payee was Sarah Reynolds. My stomach lurched. I turned to the next document, a credit card statement in Sarah's name, showing charges at the Seneca Casino. Thousands of dollars in cash advances. The dates matched the withdrawals from Margaret's treatment fund perfectly. A printed email from Margaret to someone named Frank Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, I need absolute proof of what my daughter has done. The forensic accountant you recommended has confirmed the forgeries, but I need to know how deep this goes. Please expand your investigation. I'll pay your fees from my personal account. My husband must not know until I'm gone. He couldn't handle this betrayal while watching me die. Invoice everything as estate planning consultation." Mr. Patterson, the private investigator's report was thorough, devastating. Sarah had been gambling heavily for 3 years. She'd started with credit cards, moved to personal loans, then began stealing from us. The forged checks, the fictional medical bills she'd submit for reimbursement, the times she'd offered to pick up my prescriptions and pocketed the cash I'd given her. Every kindness she'd shown during Margaret's illness had been an opportunity for theft. But it was the final document that broke me. A photograph from the casino's security camera. Sarah at a blackjack table laughing, champagne in hand. The timestamp showed 11:43 p.m. September 15th. I knew that date. It was burned into my memory. Margaret had taken a terrible turn that night. We'd thought it was the end. I'd called Sarah, begging her to come to the hospital to say goodbye to her mother. She'd said she was in Boston for work, couldn't get a flight until morning. She'd cried on the phone about missing her chance to say goodbye. She'd been 20 minutes away gambling with her mother's treatment money while Margaret struggled to breathe. I don't know how long I sat in that small room surrounded by evidence of my daughter's monstrosity. The bank manager knocked gently, asking if I needed anything. Water, maybe, or tissues. I hadn't realized I was crying. There was still the sealed envelope. "Open only if Sarah betrays Gibson's trust." Well, selling the necklace certainly qualified. But my hands hesitated. Once I opened this, there was no going back. No more pretending Sarah was just selfish or thoughtless. No more excuses. The envelope contained a single document, a last will and testament properly witnessed and notarized. Not the will we'd filed with our attorney, the one leaving everything divided between Sarah and various charities. This one was dated 2 weeks later. Being of sound mind and body, it began in legalese that Margaret must have had an attorney prepare. The provisions were stark. If Sarah committed any act of theft, fraud, or betrayal against Gibson after Margaret's death, everything would go to charity. The house, the investments, her mother's jewelry collection, even personal mementos. Sarah would receive only a single dollar, the minimum required, to prevent her from contesting the will. But it was the personal note attached that revealed Margaret's true intention. "This is not revenge, my darling. This is leverage. Use it to save our daughter from herself. She's sick with addiction, and sick people need medicine even when that medicine is bitter. The law is on your side now. Force her to get help. Force her to face consequences. But please don't let her destroy herself. I couldn't save myself, but maybe we can still save her. I gathered everything with numb fingers, the weight of Margaret's love and foresight, staggering. Even dying, even betrayed, even in pain, she'd spent her last months not plotting revenge, but planning redemption. She'd built a careful trap, not to destroy our daughter, but to save her. I left the bank in a daze, folders clutched against my chest like armor. The afternoon sun felt surreal after the vault's fluorescent tomb. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Sarah, probably wondering where I'd disappeared to. Let her wonder. I had work to do. Back home, I locked Margaret's evidence in my study safe and sat at my desk trying to think like my wife had thought. She'd been a chess player, always thinking 6 moves ahead. If she'd gone to such lengths to document Sarah's past betrayals, if she'd changed her will and hired investigators, then she must have left me more breadcrumbs to follow. I started with our financial records, the ones I'd foolishly left Sarah to manage these past 2 years, while grief made me negligent. She'd volunteered so sweetly after the funeral, saying I shouldn't have to worry about bills while mourning. I'd been grateful, handed over passwords and checkbooks without a second thought. My daughter taking care of her grieving father. What could be more natural? The credit card statements told an ugly story. Charges I didn't recognize going back 18 months. Restaurant bills when I'd been home eating frozen dinners. Shopping sprees at high-end stores while she complained about her teacher's salary. Cash advances that corresponded with nothing in my life. Small at first, then growing bolder as I failed to notice. My checking account was worse. Checks made out to cash in my handwriting, except I hadn't written them. The forgeries were good practiced. She must have traced my signature over and over until she could reproduce it flawlessly. The memo lines all said things like groceries or pharmacy or dad's expenses. Innocent explanations for anyone who might look. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. Death by 1,000 cuts, bleeding me slowly while patting my hand and asking if I needed anything. The total, when I finally calculated it, made me physically ill. Just over $200,000 in 2 years. Combined with what she'd stolen from Margaret's treatment fund, $250,000. Where had it all gone? The private investigator's report suggested gambling, but even addicts couldn't lose money that fast without help. There had to be more to the story. I called the number on Frank Morrison's business card, hardly surprised when he answered on the first ring. "Mr. Reynolds, I've been expecting your call for 2 years." His voice was gravelly, world-weary. "I'm assuming you found Margaret's materials. You knew about the necklace. I knew she'd arranged for you to find everything when the time was right. Your wife was a remarkable woman, Mr. Reynolds. Smartest client I ever had. She had me continue surveillance on Sarah even after she passed. Paid for 2 years in advance. You've been watching my daughter for 2 years." The thought was both comforting and disturbing. Documenting, not watching. There's a difference. Your wife wanted a complete record for when this day came. How much have you discovered on your own? I outlined what I'd found. Frank listened without interrupting, occasionally making affirming noises. When I finished, he sighed. "That's about 60% of it. Sarah's in deep with some dangerous people, Mr. Reynolds. Not mob stuff, nothing that dramatic. But the kind of professional criminals who run illegal gambling operations and don't accept IOUs. She owes them about $80,000 as of last week." The vacation money. I said, understanding flooding through me. "She's not going to Cancun. She's trying to buy time. That $2,000 from the necklace probably bought her another week, maybe 2. But they'll come collecting soon. Your wife anticipated this. She knew Sarah's addiction would eventually lead her to the wrong people." "What did Margaret want me to do?" "Check your email. I'm sending you files your wife asked me to hold until you made contact. Password is your wedding anniversary." The files were extensive. 2 years of surveillance reports, financial tracking, psychological profiles. Sarah met with her bookies every 2 weeks, usually at a warehouse in the industrial district. The operation was sophisticated, run by brothers named Marcus and Tony Castellano. They had a dozen people like Sarah on the hook, bleeding them slowly, always offering one more bet to win it all back. But Margaret hadn't just gathered evidence. She'd made contacts. There were emails between her and an FBI agent named Patricia Williams discussing the Castellano operation. Margaret had been feeding them information for months before she died, helping build a federal case. The FBI was interested in Sarah as a potential witness, someone who could provide inside testimony about the operation. The final file was a video message. Margaret's face filled my laptop screen, thin and pale, but eyes still bright with determination. It was dated a week before she died. "Hello, my love." Her recorded voice made my chest tight. "If you're watching this, then Sarah has finally pushed too far, and you've found everything I've prepared. I know you're hurt and angry. I know you feel betrayed not just by Sarah but by me for keeping this secret. But please understand I couldn't bear to spend my last months watching you grieve for two losses at once." She paused, coughing weakly. Even in recording, I wanted to fetch her water, adjust her pillows. "Sarah is sick, Gibson. Addiction is a disease just like my cancer. The difference is hers can be cured if she chooses treatment. Everything I've done, every secret I've kept, has been to give her that choice. Not enable her, not shelter her from consequences, but create circumstances where recovery becomes her best option." She smiled, then that crooked grin that had made me fall in love 40 years ago. As I walked toward the restaurant's quiet alcove, I heard the scrape of chairs behind me. In the reflection of a mirror, I saw Sarah lean across the table, whispering urgently to Derek. He shook his head, gestured toward my wine glass. The video continued with detailed instructions: which family members to invite, what documents to present in what order, how to manage Sarah's likely reactions, even suggested dialogue for crucial moments. My wife had scripted her own posthumous intervention. I spent the next 3 days following her blueprint. I installed hidden cameras in the house, subtle ones Frank recommended that looked like smoke detectors and air fresheners. I made copies of every document, organized them into presentation folders. I opened new bank accounts Sarah couldn't access, and moved what remained of my money. The invitation calls were delicate work. I reached out to my brother Thomas first. He'd just retired after 30 years as a federal judge and had the gravitas to keep things orderly. Family meeting. Thomas sounded puzzled. "Everything all right, Gib?" "I need to update my will, make some decisions about the estate. Would like everyone's input. Can you make it Saturday?" "Of course. Want me to bring anything?" "Just your judge's temperament. Things might get emotional." I called Sarah's husband, Robert, next. They'd been married 12 years, had 2 beautiful kids. Robert was a good man, a pediatric surgeon who'd supported Sarah through what he believed were rough patches. How much did he know, I wondered? How many lies had she fed him? "Saturday works," Robert said carefully. "Sarah mentioned you've been stressed about the necklace. I'm sorry about that, Gibson. I told her she should have asked you first." So she'd already started spinning stories, painting me as an overreacting widower. Perfect. Let her think I was just fussing about jewelry. The surprise would be that much more complete. I invited Margaret's sister, Helen, who'd never much liked Sarah but loved family drama. My cousin Edwin, a forensic accountant who'd helped with Margaret's estate. Sarah's best friend from college, Jennifer, who'd recently been asking Sarah about a $10,000 loan that never got repaid. 8 people total, each nursing their own suspicions about Sarah, each a piece of the puzzle Margaret had designed. Sarah herself was eager to attend when I called her Thursday evening. "Of course I'll be there, Dad. I'm glad you're finally thinking about the future. Mom would want you to move forward." Her voice dripped concern. "Have you thought about maybe downsizing? That big house must be so lonely. Robert and I could help you find a nice condo maybe near us, so we could check on you more often." Already calculating her inheritance planning to push me into a smaller space so she could help manage the house sale. I made appropriate noises about considering all options, let her think I was malleable. Friday afternoon, Frank Morrison called with an update. Sarah met with the Castellano brothers yesterday. She negotiated another extension, promised a large payment within 2 weeks. Told them her father was updating his will soon. They seemed satisfied. She's that confident I'll give her money. She's that desperate to believe it. Addicts always think the next score will fix everything. Your wife understood that. It's why the intervention has to be dramatic enough to shatter her delusions completely. That evening, I retrieved Margaret's necklace from Samuel at the pawn shop. He refused any payment beyond what he'd given Sarah. "Consider it my contribution to whatever you're planning," he said kindly. "Your wife was a regular customer here, you know. Not pawning things, buying them. Little antiques, vintage jewelry. She said she was building a collection for your granddaughters. Talked about you and Sarah all the time. That woman loved her family fiercely. I wore the necklace home tucked under my shirt, the sapphire pendant resting where Margaret used to lay her head on my chest. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, Sarah would face the reckoning Margaret had orchestrated from beyond the grave. I spent the evening reviewing Margaret's notes one last time, practicing the words she'd suggested, preparing for every contingency she'd anticipated. The stage was set. The players were cast. The trap was baited. Time for the show to begin. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp October morning Margaret had loved, all golden light and rust-colored leaves. I'd been up since dawn, arranging the dining room like a courtroom. Document folders at my place setting. The necklace in its blue velvet box centered on the table like an exhibit. Fresh flowers from Margaret's garden in her favorite vase, adding a ghost's presence to the proceedings. The doorbell rang at precisely 2 o'clock. Thomas arrived first, reliable, as always, bringing his wife, Patricia. He surveyed the formal table setting with a raised eyebrow, but said nothing beyond a warm greeting. Edwin came next, then Helen, who immediately noticed the flowers. "Prairie roses," she murmured, touching one bloom gently. "Maggie's favorites. She tried for years to get them to grow in that clay soil." Jennifer arrived looking nervous, probably still hoping to hear about her missing $10,000. Sarah and Robert came last, Sarah breezing in with a bakery box. "I brought Mom's favorite coffee cake," she announced, playing the devoted daughter. "Remember how she used to make it for special occasions?" I remembered. I also remembered finding a receipt last night showing this exact cake had been Margaret's traditional order from Donovan's bakery. Even her gestures of nostalgia were manufactured. We gathered around the dining room table, everyone commenting on the formality. I'd set it with Margaret's wedding china, the silver we'd received as anniversary gifts, crystal glasses that caught the afternoon light. A last supper of sorts. "Thank you all for coming." I began, standing at the head of the table. "I know it seems unusual, but I needed family here for what I have to share." "Is this about your will, Dad?" Sarah prompted, eager to move things along. "Because I've been thinking, and I really believe Mom would want you to enjoy your remaining years, not worry about maintaining this big house." "In a way, it's about inheritance," I said carefully. "About what Margaret left us. All of us." I picked up the blue velvet box, opening it to reveal the sapphire pendant. Sarah's face tightened slightly, but she maintained her concerned daughter mask. I found Mom's necklace. I continued lifting it so the stone caught the light. The one Sarah sold last week for vacation money. "Dad." Sarah started, her voice carrying a note of exasperation. "I already explained. It was just sitting in your drawer. Mom's gone. She'd want us to enjoy life, not cling to material things." "You're right," I agreed, watching her relax. Margaret wasn't materialistic, but she was sentimental about certain things. This necklace, for instance. "Did you know it opens—" The room grew quiet. I demonstrated the hidden mechanism, revealing the empty compartment. "There was a key inside, and coordinates. Your mother left me a message." Sarah's knuckles were white as she gripped her coffee cup. Robert looked between us, clearly sensing undercurrents he didn't understand. "Before she died," I continued, "Margaret rented a safety deposit box under her maiden name. She left instructions, evidence. She hired a private investigator named Frank Morrison. Evidence of what Thomas asked in his judge voice, though I suspected he was already piecing things together. I opened the first folder spreading out bank statements. 3 years ago, when Margaret was fighting cancer, we established a treatment fund, $100,000 for experimental therapies. $50,000 of it disappeared. Medical costs, Sarah said quickly. You know how expensive. Forged checks. I interrupted, laying them out. Falsified invoices, cash withdrawals that coincided with visits to Seneca Casino. Would you like to see the surveillance photos? The room was tomb silent. Robert had gone pale, staring at his wife. Jennifer was looking at Sarah with dawning comprehension. Helen's expression could have curdled milk. Dad, I don't know what you think you found, but there's obviously been some misunderstanding. September 15th. I said quietly. 2 years ago, your mother was dying. I called you begging you to come say goodbye. You said you were in Boston. I placed the casino photo on the table. Sarah at the blackjack table, champagne in hand, laughing while her mother struggled for breath 20 minutes away. Jennifer gasped. Helen made a sound of pure disgust. But it was Robert who surprised everyone. Boston, he said flatly. You told me you were at a medical conference in Boston. I stayed home with the kids so you could go. You said you needed continuing education credits. Sarah turned to her husband, tears already forming. Bobby, please, it's not what it looks like. How much? Robert's voice was surgical in its precision. How much have you stolen? Because that's what this is, isn't it? Theft. I think I can answer that, I said, opening the second folder. $200,000 from various accounts over 2 years, forged checks, fraudulent charges, cash advances. My daughter has been systematically robbing me while playing the grieving daughter. 200? Thomas couldn't finish. Gibson, are you certain? Edwin. I turned to my cousin. You're welcome to verify the numbers. I've made copies of everything. Edwin accepted the folder with professional interest, immediately spotting patterns I'd missed. These forgeries are sophisticated. This took practice, planning. She's sick! The words exploded from Sarah like a dam breaking. I have a problem, okay, I admit it. But I'm getting help. I've been going to meetings. Which meetings? Robert asked coldly. Tuesday evenings when you're supposedly at book club. Thursday mornings when you're at yoga. I know you're lying, Sarah. I've known for months. I hired my own investigator. This was unexpected. I watched Robert reach into his jacket, pulling out his own folder. 6 months ago, I noticed our savings were depleted. You said you'd invested in some teacher's retirement fund program, but there was no program. I've been documenting everything, moving the children's college funds to accounts you can't access, preparing for divorce. Sarah's careful mask finally shattered completely. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting our children from their mother, Robert replied. Do you know what you've put me through? The lies I've had to tell them about why mommy can't come to their games anymore, why we can't afford their summer camps. I've been working double shifts to cover what you've stolen. I can explain everything, Sarah said desperately. The casino, it's not what you think. I was trying to win back what I lost, for us, for our future. You stole from your dying mother, Helen said, voice dripping venom. What explanation could possibly justify that? She was going to die anyway. Sarah shouted, then immediately tried to backpedal. I just meant the experimental treatment wouldn't have saved her. The doctor said the chances were minimal. That money could help living people, our family, the kids' education. The kids' education. Robert laughed bitterly. You emptied their college fund 6 months ago. Told me your father had offered to pay for their schooling so we could use the money for a house down payment. Another lie. I hadn't known that part. Each revelation added another layer to Sarah's betrayal. Margaret must have known, though. She'd known everything. There's more, I said quietly. The gambling debts. The dangerous people you owe money to. The Castellano brothers. Sarah went white. How do you… Margaret knew everything, Sarah. She spent her last months not planning her funeral but planning your salvation. She knew about your addiction, the stealing, the lies, all of it. I pulled out Margaret's second will, the one that would disinherit Sarah if she betrayed me. She even prepared for this moment. If you stole from me, everything goes to charity. You get $1. She wouldn't, Sarah whispered. Mom loved me. She wouldn't. She loved you enough to build you a safety net, I continued. Frank Morrison has been monitoring you for 2 years on Margaret's instructions. The FBI knows about your involvement with the Castellano operation. They want you to testify. FBI. Thomas leaned forward fully, in judge mode now. Gibson, what have you gotten into? Not me. Margaret. She spent her last months helping build a federal case against a gambling ring. Turns out dying women make excellent informants. No one suspects them of wearing wires to chemotherapy. I pulled out the final piece, Margaret's letter to Sarah. Still sealed her handwriting across the front, for my daughter with love and hope. This is from your mother, her final words to you. But before you read it, you should know the Castellano brothers expect payment within 10 days. $80,000 you don't have. They're not patient people. I'll get the money, Sarah said frantically. I'll figure something out. I always do. How? Robert asked. You've destroyed every relationship, burned every bridge. Your father won't give you anything. I won't. You've stolen from Jennifer, probably others. Who's left to con… Jennifer finally spoke up. That $10,000 you borrowed. For your mother's medical expenses, you said. You cried in my kitchen about not being able to afford her pain medication. I emptied my savings because I couldn't stand the thought of Maggie suffering. But she had excellent insurance, didn't she? That money went to blackjack. Sarah was sobbing now, ugly tears that might have been genuine or might have been another performance. With her, I could no longer tell the difference. Read your mother's letter, I said, pushing it across the table. With shaking hands, Sarah broke the seal. We all watched as her eyes moved across the page, her face cycling through emotions. Shock, grief, something that might have been hope. When she finished, she looked up at me with eyes that reminded me suddenly of the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. She says she forgives me, Sarah whispered. She says addiction is a disease, that she arranged everything so I could get help instead of going to prison. But I have to want it. I have to choose. The FBI deal is real, I confirmed. Testify against the Castellano brothers, complete court-mandated rehabilitation, and avoid prosecution. Margaret negotiated it personally, your last gift from her. The room sat in heavy silence, processing everything. Sarah clutched her mother's letter like a lifeline. Robert stared at his wife with the expression of a man watching a stranger. The rest of the family seemed caught between disgust and pity. Finally, Thomas spoke. You need a lawyer, Sarah, a good one. If you're serious about accepting this deal, we need to move fast. You'd help me. Sarah looked at her uncle with desperate hope. After everything, I'll help because Margaret asked me to, Thomas replied. She called me 3 weeks before she died, told me this day would come, asked me to make sure you got the best legal representation possible. I promised her. So yes, I'll help. But only if you're serious about getting clean. What about us? Robert asked quietly. Our marriage? Our children? Sarah turned to her husband, reaching for his hand. He pulled back. I need time, he said. The kids need stability. You can't provide that right now. When you're clean, when you've proven you can be trusted, we'll talk. But I won't let you destroy our children the way you've destroyed yourself. It was Helen who surprised me next. My sister-in-law, who'd spent years barely tolerating Sarah, stood and walked around the table. She stopped beside Sarah's chair, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. Your mother made me promise too, she said gruffly. Said when this day came I was to tell you something. She loved you more than her own life. Loved you enough to let you fall so you could learn to stand. Don't waste her final gift." Sarah broke down completely, then sobbing into Helen's shoulder. Real tears this time, I thought. The kind that came from hitting bottom and realizing the only way left was up. The family meeting had stretched into evening emotional revelations, giving way to practical planning. Thomas was on the phone with a colleague who specialized in federal cases. Robert had stepped outside to call his mother, arranging for her to watch the children for a few days. Edwin was reviewing financial documents, calculating the full scope of the damage. Sarah sat at the table, hollow-eyed and silent, still clutching Margaret's letter. I'd given her space to process everything, but time was running short. The Castellano brothers wouldn't wait for family drama to resolve itself. "Sarah," I said, gently sitting beside her, "we need to talk about your debt. $80,000 in 10 days. Do you have any plan at all?" She laughed bitterly. "I told them I'd have it after you updated your will. Promised them a big payday. They probably already have plans for the money. Then we'll use that," I decided. "Tell them you convinced me. Say I'm liquidating some investments and you'll have their money in full by Friday." "You're going to pay them?" Hope flickered in her eyes, followed immediately by suspicion. "What's the catch?" "The catch is they come here to collect. To my house, where federal agents will be waiting." I pulled out Frank Morrison's business card. "We're going to end this properly." Thomas finished his call and rejoined us. "My colleague can meet with us Monday morning. He says the FBI deal is solid, but Sarah needs to be completely honest. Any hidden debts, any other crimes, they need to know everything." "There's more," Sarah admitted quietly. "Not just gambling. I sold some of Mom's jewelry to a fence the Castellanos recommended. Claimed it was stolen for the insurance money." Another punch to the gut. Margaret's mother's brooch. The pearl earrings from our 25th anniversary. Pieces I'd thought were lost in the chaos after her death. "How much insurance fraud?" Thomas asked with professional calm. "Maybe 30,000 total. I needed to make payments and Dad had stopped leaving cash around the house." Because I'd started noticing it disappearing, though I'd blamed my own grief-addled memory. How many times had I questioned my own mind rather than suspect my daughter? "We'll add it to the list," Thomas said. "Better to confess everything now than have it come out later." Robert returned from his phone call looking grim. "The kids are asking for you, Sarah. Sophie wants to know why Mommy isn't coming home tonight. What am I supposed to tell a 6-year-old? "Tell her Mommy's sick," Sarah said quietly. "Tell her I'm going to get better, but it takes time. Tell her I love her." "Do you—" Robert's voice was raw. "Do you love them enough to get clean? Or will you disappoint them like you've disappointed everyone else?" "I want to get better," Sarah insisted. "I do. But it's not that simple. You don't understand what it's like, the need, the certainty that the next hand will fix everything. When I'm at those tables, nothing else matters. Not you, not the kids, not even myself." "Your mother understood," I said. "She compared it to her cancer, a disease that consumed everything required radical treatment. Are you ready for radical treatment?" Before Sarah could answer, my phone rang. Frank Morrison's name appeared on the screen. "Gibson, I just got word from my contact. The Castellano brothers are getting nervous about their money. They're planning to visit Sarah tomorrow if they don't hear from her tonight." "Tomorrow's too soon," I said. "We need more time to coordinate with the FBI. Then Sarah needs to call them now. Convince them to wait until Friday. Can she do that?" I looked at my daughter. Can you lie to them one more time, but for the right reasons?" Sarah nodded slowly. "What do I say?" Frank walked us through it. Sarah would claim I'd agreed to help, but needed time to liquidate investments without raising red flags. She'd insist on meeting at my house Friday afternoon, when I'd supposedly have cash ready. The Castellanos knew where I lived. It would seem like a power move on Sarah's part, proof she had me under control. Sarah made the call on speaker so we could all hear. Her voice transformed, becoming the smooth manipulator who'd fooled us all for years. She painted a picture of a doddering father, still grief-stricken, easily managed. She promised not just the 80,000, but interest for their patience. 20,000 extra if they gave her until Friday. You sure about this, Sarah? The man's voice was cold, skeptical. Because if you're playing games... No games, Marcus. My dad's good for it. You know how much this house is worth. How much my mother left, 100,000 is nothing to him. He just needs time to make it liquid without his financial advisor asking questions. Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock. If you don't have our money, I'll have it. My kids' lives depend on it, right? I know what happens to people who don't pay. They agreed, warning her not to disappoint them. After she hung up, Sarah was shaking. They mean it, she whispered. About the kids. They know where they go to school where Robert works. They made sure I understood that. All the more reason to end this, Thomas said firmly. These aren't just bookies anymore. They're threatening children. The FBI will be very interested in that. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Thomas would contact the federal prosecutor first thing Monday. Robert would keep the children away from their usual routines for safety. I'd work with Frank and the FBI to prepare the house for Friday's trap. As the family prepared to leave, each member stopped by Sarah's chair. Jennifer was first, her anger tempered by exhaustion. I want my money back, she said simply. Not now, I know you don't have it. But someday when you're clean, when you're working again, pay me back. I will, Sarah promised. Every penny, with interest. Jennifer studied her for a long moment. We were best friends once, real friends. I'd like to believe we could be again, but you've got a long way to go. Edwin left copies of his preliminary analysis, showing Sarah exactly how much she'd stolen, how she'd done it, what it meant in legal terms. You're looking at serious jail time without this deal, he warned. Don't screw it up. Helen hugged Sarah again, whispering something that made fresh tears flow. When it was Robert's turn, he stood at a distance, hands in his pockets. I'm taking the kids to my mother's in Buffalo for the week, he said. When this is over, when you're in treatment, they can visit. Supervised at first. We'll see how it goes. I understand, Sarah said quietly. Bobby, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. You deserved better. They deserved better. Yes, we did. He turned to me. Gibson, I'm sorry I didn't come to you sooner. I suspected for months, but hoped I was wrong. Hoped she'd stop on her own. We all hoped, I said. It's what families do, hope against evidence. After everyone left, Sarah and I sat alone in the dining room. The documents were still spread across the table, evidence of years of deception. Margaret's necklace caught the lamplight, its secret, revealed purpose fulfilled. I should go, Sarah said eventually. Unless... Could I stay here tonight? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm scared to go home. Scared I'll drive to the casino instead. Your room's still upstairs, I said. It hasn't changed since high school. She smiled weakly. Mom never could bring herself to redecorate. Said she liked remembering me young and innocent. You were never innocent, I corrected gently. Even as a child, you pushed boundaries, tested limits. But you were honest about it then. Bold-faced and unashamed. That's what changed. The lying. When did she know? Sarah asked. When did Mom figure out what I'd become? I thought back through Margaret's final year. I think she suspected during her first round of chemo. Little things didn't add up. But she knew for certain after the September incident. The night you chose gambling over goodbye. I wanted to come, Sarah said softly. I was winning that night. Really winning. 10,000 up. I thought if I could just ride the streak a little longer, I'd have enough to pay everything back. Make it all right. But I lost it all. Every penny. By the time I realized hours had passed, visiting hours were over. And instead of telling the truth, you invented Boston. The lies just got easier. Each one made the next one necessary, like addiction to deception running parallel to the gambling. We climbed the stairs to her childhood room. She was right. Margaret had preserved it like a shrine. Debate team trophies, honor roll certificates, Photos of a smiling teenager with her whole life ahead of her. No sign of the woman who would steal from her dying mother. "Dad." Sarah paused in the doorway. "What Mom did setting all this up? Do you think she forgave me?" I considered the question, thinking of Margaret's careful plans, her refusal to give up hope, even while dying. "She forgave you the moment you betrayed her," I said finally. "But she loved you too much to let forgiveness enable destruction. Sometimes love looks like consequences. Sometimes it looks like a trap that saves you from yourself." I left her there among her childhood ghosts and returned to my own room. Margaret's side of the bed still smelled faintly of her lavender lotion. I pulled her necklace from my pocket, opening the secret compartment one more time. Empty now, its contents revealed mission accomplished. But there was something else. A detail I'd missed in the emotional chaos of discovery. Inside the compartment, engraved in tiny script, were words I needed a magnifying glass to read. "For Gibson. My heart, always." She'd worn my love against her heart every day, hidden, but always present. Just as she'd carried the weight of Sarah's addiction, the knowledge of our daughter's failures, the plans for salvation. All of it concealed, protected, waiting for the right moment. I fell asleep holding the necklace, dreaming of Margaret Young, and laughing before cancer and betrayal and careful plans. In the dream, she told me Friday would change everything, that Sarah would choose redemption, that our family would heal. I hoped she was right. Margaret usually was. Monday arrived with Sarah meeting her lawyer at 8 sharp, Thomas accompanying her like a protective shadow. I spent the morning with FBI Special Agent Patricia Williams, a composed woman in her 50s who'd worked with Margaret for months before her death. "Your wife was remarkable," Agent Williams said, reviewing files in my living room. "Most people in her condition would have focused solely on their own pain. She spent hours detailing the Castellano operation, recording conversations, providing evidence we couldn't have obtained otherwise." "She never told me," I said, still processing Margaret's double life as a dying informant. "She was protecting you and building an ironclad case. The Castellanos have operated for years, careful to stay just under federal radar. But Margaret gave us the roadmap. Sarah's testimony will be the final piece." We spent 3 hours preparing the house for Friday's operation. Hidden cameras better than my amateur attempts. Recording equipment that would capture every word. Agent Williams walked through various scenarios, showing me where to stand, what to say, how to react when things went sideways. "The money will be marked," she explained, showing me a briefcase filled with carefully tracked bills. "The moment they accept it, we have them on federal charges. But we need them to explicitly threaten you or Sarah on tape. Can you handle that? Stay calm, while dangerous men make threats in your home." "I've already lost my wife," I said simply. "My daughter nearly destroyed herself. What else can they threaten that matters?" Wednesday brought another family gathering, this time at Thomas's house. Sarah had spent 2 days in legal meetings, therapy sessions, and FBI briefings. She looked exhausted but clearer somehow, as if confession had lifted physical weight from her shoulders. "The plea deal is solid," Thomas announced. "Full cooperation, 24 months in a residential treatment facility instead of prison, then 5 years probation. She'll have to pay restitution, but avoid a felony record if she completes the program successfully." 24 months. Robert had brought the children to see their mother, though he kept them close to his side. "That's a long time for the kids." "It's what I need," Sarah said quietly. "What we all need. Time for me to get well and prove I've changed. The facility allows supervised family visits after 90 days. Sophie, her 6-year-old, broke free from Robert's grip and climbed into Sarah's lap. "Mommy, are you still sick?" "Yes, baby. But I'm taking medicine now. Special medicine that will help me get better." "Like Grandma took medicine." Sarah's voice cracked. "No, sweetheart. Not like Grandma. My sickness can get better if I work really hard. Grandma's couldn't, no matter how hard she tried." I watched them together, 4 generations of Reynolds women, if you counted Margaret's hovering presence. Sophie had her grandmother's eyes, that same penetrating gaze that saw through pretense. What would Margaret tell her granddaughter about strength, about failure, about redemption? Thursday was final preparations. Frank Morrison confirmed the Castellanos were planning to arrive at 3 precisely, bringing 2 enforcers for security. Agent Williams positioned her team throughout the neighborhood. Houses that had stood empty were suddenly occupied by federal agents posing as contractors, delivery drivers, suburban stereotypes. Remember, she coached Sarah and me one final time. We need them to verbally threaten you, make demands. The moment money changes hands, we move in. But if they sense anything wrong, if they try to leave, we can't stop them. This has to be done perfectly. What if they hurt someone? Sarah asked, the reality of tomorrow settling over her. They won't get the chance. We'll have 12 agents within 50 feet. The moment they become physically threatening, we intervene. Your safety comes first, evidence second. That night, Sarah cooked dinner. Real cooking, not something from a box or bakery. She made Margaret's pot roast following the recipe card stained with decades of use. We ate quietly, tasting memory in every bite. I've been thinking about what Mom said in her letter, Sarah said over coffee. About redemption requiring recognition. I want to write letters. To everyone I've hurt. Not asking forgiveness, just acknowledging what I did. That's a good start, I encouraged. Your mother believed in the power of words, written ones especially. They can't be taken back or denied later. Will you help me, make sure I don't minimize or make excuses? We spent the rest of the evening crafting letters. To Robert, acknowledging not just the money, but the 1,000 small betrayals. To the children, age-appropriate explanations they could read when older. To Jennifer, with a payment plan stretching years into the future. Even to the insurance company confessing fraud. Each letter was painful, stripping away the comfortable lies Sarah had lived behind. But with each confession, she seemed to breathe easier. Margaret had been right, as usual. Truth was medicine, bitter, but healing. Friday morning dawned gray and drizzling, perfect weather for a trap. Sarah arrived early, hands shaking as she helped me arrange the money on the dining room table. $100,000 in neat stacks, every bill recorded, every serial number logged. They'll count it, she warned. Marcus is paranoid about being shorted. Let them count, I said. The longer they stay, the more evidence we gather. By 2:30, everyone was in position. Agent Williams was in a van 3 houses down. Frank Morrison watched from across the street. Federal agents posed as roofers, landscapers, a cable repair crew. Sarah and I sat in the living room pretending to drink tea while our hearts raced. At exactly 3 o'clock, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. Marcus Castellano emerged first, all expensive suit and dead eyes. His brother Tony followed then, 2 men who looked like they bench-pressed small cars for fun. They didn't knock, just walked in like they owned the place. Sarah, Marcus said pleasantly, as if arriving for a social call. And this must be the famous father, the one with deep pockets and soft heart. The money's in the dining room, I said, standing slowly playing the frightened old man. Please just take it and leave us alone. Now, Tony interjected. Where's the hospitality? We're business partners with your daughter. Surely that rates a conversation. They moved through my house like predators, touching things, asserting dominance. One enforcer stood by the front door, the other by the kitchen exit. Classic intimidation, making sure we felt trapped. In the dining room, Marcus surveyed the money with satisfaction. You see, Tony, I told you Sarah would come through. Family loyalty is a beautiful thing. Count it, Sarah said, her voice steadier than her hands. It's all there. 80 for the principal, 20 for interest. We're square after this. Square. Tony laughed unpleasantly. That's not how this works, sweetheart. You're a good earner. We'd hate to lose you. I'm done gambling, Sarah announced. This is it. Final payment. Marcus and Tony exchanged amused looks. People don't quit us, Marcus explained patiently. We quit them, and only when they're no longer profitable. A teacher with a rich daddy? You're very profitable. I don't have any more money, I protested. This cleaned me out. Now that's a lie, Tony said, pulling out his phone. He showed us photos of my house from various angles, my car, even my bank from the outside. We do our homework, Mr. Reynolds. This house alone is worth $700,000. Your wife's life insurance paid out $500,000. You've got plenty more where this came from. And if we don't pay, I asked, needing the threat verbalized. Marcus smiled coldly. Sarah, show your father the pictures I sent you last month. With trembling hands, Sarah pulled out her phone. Photos of Sophie and her brother at school, Robert at the hospital, even one of me at Margaret's grave. The threat was clear, without words. You see, Marcus continued conversationally, everyone has pressure points. Sarah learned that when she couldn't pay 6 months ago. We explained how her children might have accidents, how her husband's surgical hands might get damaged. Amazing how quickly she found money after that conversation. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay in character. You're threatening my grandchildren. Threatening? Tony looked offended. We're having a friendly discussion about consequences. Sarah understands consequences now. Don't you, dear? Yes, Sarah whispered. I understand. Good. Then you understand why this isn't your last payment. It's just this month's installment. We'll expect the same next month, and the month after. Consider it rent for keeping your family safe. They had said everything we needed. Threats, extortion, admission of an ongoing criminal enterprise. But Agent Williams hadn't given the signal yet. We needed more. I can't pay $100,000 every month, I said desperately. No one could. Then Sarah goes back to earning, Marcus said simply. We have games running every night. High-stakes tables where a smart girl can make $5,000–$10,000 a night. Of course she can lose that much too. But that's the fun, isn't it, Sarah? The risk. I'm in recovery, Sarah said suddenly. I've admitted I have a gambling addiction. If you force me back to the tables, you're contributing to a disease. Both brothers laughed. Disease! Tony wiped his eyes theatrically. That's rich. Is greed a disease now? Is stupidity? You know what's a disease. Marcus turned serious. Thinking you can walk away from us. That's a fatal disease, Sarah. For you and everyone you love. That was enough. I heard Agent Williams' voice in my earpiece. Perfect. We're moving in 30 seconds. Get ready. The front door exploded open. FBI agents poured in from every entrance, weapons-drawn voices commanding. The enforcers reached for guns but froze when they realized they were outnumbered 5-1. FBI, everyone on the ground now. Marcus looked at Sarah with dawning realization. You set us up. No, I said, standing taller, dropping the frightened act. My wife set you up. From her deathbed. You threatened the wrong family. The arrest was swift, professional. The Castellano brothers cursed and threatened even as they were cuffed. The money was photographed, catalogued, entered into evidence. Our house transformed from trap to crime scene in minutes. Agent Williams approached us as her team led the brothers away. Outstanding work, both of you. With the recordings and their threats on tape, we have enough to put them away for 20 years minimum. What happens now? Sarah asked, adrenaline crash, making her shake. Now you testify. Help us unravel their entire operation. Save other families from what yours endured. She turned to me. Your wife would be proud, Mr. Reynolds. Her plan worked perfectly. As the FBI cleared out, leaving our house strangely quiet, Sarah and I sat on the porch. The rain had stopped leaving that clean smell Margaret always loved. Neighbors emerged from houses wondering about the commotion. Tomorrow there would be questions, gossip, judgment. But today, we'd won. Dad, Sarah's voice was small. Do you think Mom knew it would work? All of it? I thought about my wife dying but planning, weak but fighting, betrayed but still believing in redemption. She knew you, Sarah. Knew that underneath the addiction and lies, you were still the daughter she raised. the one who could choose right when given a real chance. She didn't hope it would work. She made sure it would. Sarah leaned against my shoulder, and for a moment I felt Margaret's presence. Not ghostly or mystical, just the echo of a love so strong it survived death betrayal and carefully orchestrated federal stings. The necklace rested warm against my chest, its secrets revealed, its purpose fulfilled. But I would keep wearing it, this reminder of Margaret's faith in second chances. Sarah would leave for treatment soon. The road ahead was long uncertain. But for the first time in 3 years, it led somewhere other than destruction. 6 months later, I stood outside Serenity Springs Recovery Center, a sprawling facility nestled in the Adirondack foothills. The April air carried hints of spring new growth pushing through winter's debris. Fitting, I thought, checking my reflection in the car window before heading inside. The visitors' lounge was bright, comfortable, designed to ease the awkwardness of family reunions in institutional settings. Sarah was already there, sitting with the careful posture of someone relearning how to exist without lies. "Dad," she stood uncertain. 6 months of treatment had changed her. The frantic energy was gone, replaced by something quieter, more deliberate. She looked like herself again, or maybe for the first time. We hugged, and I felt her relax. These visits had evolved from stilted conversations to something approaching normal father-daughter interactions. Today was special, though. Today, Robert was bringing the children. "How are you?" I asked, though her appearance answered the question. Clear eyes, steady hands, the hollow desperation filled with something that might have been peace. 3 days ago marked 6 months clean, she said with quiet pride. They gave me a chip. I know it seems silly, a little piece of plastic, but I carry it everywhere. Your mother collected coins, I remembered suddenly. Not valuable ones, just coins from places we traveled. Said they were tangible proof of experiences. Your chip is the same. Tangible proof of the hardest journey you've taken. Sarah's eyes misted. We talked often of Margaret now, honestly, without the mythology grief creates or the revision guilt demands. The real Margaret who schemed and saved simultaneously. Robert arrived with the children at precisely 2 o'clock, punctual as always. Sophie raced ahead, while her brother hung back, 8 years old and wary. They'd visited monthly, but each reunion carried its own negotiations. "Mommy!" Sophie crashed into Sarah's arms. "I lost another tooth. The tooth fairy brought $5 whole. $5. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. "When I was little, I got a quarter." "Inflation," Robert said dryly, setting down a bag of the children's artwork. He and Sarah exchanged careful nods, excruciating politeness, marking the boundaries of their current relationship. We moved to the center's family area, a space designed to feel less institutional. The children showed Sarah their school projects, soccer trophies, report cards. Normal childhood achievements she'd missed while gambling away their future. I made the travel team, her son announced, pride overcoming reluctance. "Coach says I have natural talent." "From your dad's side," Sarah said generously, "I couldn't kick a ball straight to save my life." "Mom was the runner," I added. "Track star in high school, scholarships to 3 colleges. The children looked at their mother with new interest. She rarely talked about her past before they existed, as if life began with motherhood and addiction. But recovery meant reclaiming all parts of herself, not just the broken ones. "Tell us about when you were young." Sophie demanded, settling into Sarah's lap with the confidence of a child who'd never doubted love, only presence. Sarah glanced at Robert, seeking permission. He nodded slightly and she began telling stories. Not fairy tales or revisions, but real memories. The time she'd trained all summer for a marathon only to sprain her ankle the week before. How she'd met their father at a teachers' conference, bonding over terrible cafeteria food. Small truths that rebuilt her humanity in their eyes. "Are you coming home soon?" Sophie asked eventually, the question we'd all been dancing around. Sarah took a breath. Not yet, baby. I have 6 more months here learning how to be healthy. Then I'll have my own apartment for a while close to you and Daddy. We'll work up to me coming home. That's too long, her son said flatly. Why can't you just promise not to be sick anymore? Because promises aren't enough, Sarah said gently. I made promises before and broke them. Now I'm learning how to keep them. That takes time and practice like your soccer. You didn't make the travel team by wanting it. You practiced every day, right? He nodded reluctantly. Robert watched this exchange with something softening in his expression. Not forgiveness yet, but perhaps the possibility of it. We spent 2 hours together playing board games, sharing snacks from the vending machine building toward a new normal. When visiting hours ended, the goodbyes were teary, but not desperate. Progress. Walk me out, Robert asked, after the children hugged their mother goodbye. We stood by his car while the kids buckled themselves in. She's different, he said quietly. Not just sober, different. The gambling was a symptom, I said. She's treating the disease now, learning why she needed to escape what void she was trying to fill. Her therapist wants to do family sessions, all of us including you. He hesitated. I'm considering it. Margaret would approve, I said simply. She believed in healing the whole family, not just the identified patient. Robert smiled sadly. I miss her. She was the only one who saw this coming. She saw everything, I agreed, and loved us all anyway. After they left, I returned to the visitors' lounge. Sarah was writing in a journal part of her daily practice. Letter to Mom. She explained, showing me pages of careful script. My therapist says writing to the dead helps process unfinished business. I have a lot of that. What do you tell her? Everything. The ugly truths about what I stole, who I hurt. But also the good moments here. The clarity that comes with sobriety. The amends I'm making. She paused. I tell her about you visiting every week. How you've never missed one. I made her a promise, I said simply. The night before she died, she asked me to save you. I thought she meant from the Castellanos or from prison, but she meant from yourself. Mission accomplished, Sarah asked with fragile hope. Mission ongoing. I corrected. Recovery isn't a destination. It's a daily choice. Your mother knew that. It's why she built such an elaborate safety net. Not to catch you once, but to hold you until you could hold yourself. We sat quietly, comfortable with silence in a way we hadn't been since her childhood. Outside, spring continued its work transforming winter's damage into new growth. I testified again last week, Sarah said eventually. The Castellano trial. Faced them in court, told everything. How they preyed on addicts, threatened families, destroyed lives. It felt good. Powerful. You're helping other families avoid our pain. That's what my victim impact statement focused on. Not my losses, but theirs. The children who went hungry because their parents couldn't stop betting. The spouses who lived in fear. The grandparents who mortgaged homes to pay debts. She looked at me directly. The fathers who lost wives to cancer and daughters to addiction simultaneously. But got one back, I reminded her. That's the difference between your story and tragedy. Redemption. 18 more months of treatment and probation, she calculated. 5 years of restitution payments. A lifetime of choosing recovery daily. Think I can do it? I pulled out Margaret's necklace, showing her the engraving I'd discovered. For Gibson. My heart always. Your mother wore this every day, carrying secrets and love equally. You're her daughter. You carry the same strength. Sarah traced the words with one finger. I want to earn it. The trust, the love, the second chance. Earn it all. Then you will, I said with certainty. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one truth at a time. A counselor appeared, signaling the end of visiting hours. We hugged goodbye, and I noticed Sarah transfer her 6-month chip from pocket to palm, tangible proof of invisible progress. Driving home through spring's emergence, I thought about cycles. Seasons of destruction and renewal, death and rebirth, lies and truth. Margaret had understood cycles, known that addiction wasn't linear, that healing happened in spirals, not straight lines. The house felt less empty, now filled with purpose instead of grief. I'd started volunteering with families affected by gambling addiction, sharing our story, Margaret's plan, the possibility of redemption. Her foundation had funded 3 interventions, already elaborate traps designed with love instead of revenge. That night I sat at my computer working on a letter to Sophie and her brother. Something they could read when older, understanding their mother's journey. I wrote about their grandmother, the woman they'd barely known, but who'd saved their family from destruction. About courage wearing the disguise of illness, love disguised as consequences. Mostly I wrote about hope. The dangerous, necessary hope that people can change, that addiction can be overcome, that families can heal. The same hope that made Margaret spend her last months planning salvation instead of revenge. The necklace caught lamplight as I wrote sapphire depths holding infinite secrets. Some revealed, some still hidden, all part of a love story that transcended death, betrayal, and the careful orchestration of federal stings. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Sarah would face cravings Robert would struggle with. Trust the children would ask difficult questions. But tonight, 6 months into a journey measured in years, we were all exactly where Margaret had planned for us to be. Broken but healing. Separated but connected. Learning that sometimes the greatest love looks like letting someone fall, then building them a ladder, one rung at a time, back to grace. 2 years. 730 days since I'd discovered an empty jewelry box and a daughter's betrayal. I stood in Mount Hope Cemetery, spring flowers carpeting Margaret's grave, Sophie and her brother placing hand-picked bouquets against the headstone. "We brought prairie roses, Grandma," Sophie announced solemnly. "Mommy said they were your favorites." Sarah knelt beside her children, helping them arrange the flowers. She wore business attire, having come straight from her job at the addiction counseling center where she now worked. Full circle from patient to counselor, using her story to guide others through their own labyrinths of deceit and recovery. "Tell Grandma about your recital," Sarah encouraged her son. "I played Chopin," he said shyly. "The piece you used to play, Mom. Dad found the sheet music in the piano bench." I remembered Sarah at that age, small fingers struggling with the complex melody, while Margaret patiently guided each note. Music lessons had stopped when gambling consumed everything, another casualty of addiction. But here was the next generation reclaiming what was lost. Robert stood with us no longer at careful distances, but part of the family geometry again. They'd moved slowly from separation to dating to remarriage 6 months ago. A small ceremony with just family, Sarah wearing Margaret's necklace with my blessing. The sapphire had witnessed betrayal and redemption. It deserved to see joy, too. 2 years clean yesterday, Sarah said quietly, showing me her new chip. "The longest I've gone since it started." "Your mother would be proud," I said, meaning it. "She knew you had this strength, just needed help finding it." We stood together 4 generations, if you counted the presence we all felt. The FBI case had made headlines. 15 people imprisoned, a multi-state gambling ring, dismantled dozens of families freed from extortion. Sarah's testimony had been crucial, her willingness to face consequences inspiring others to come forward. "Remember when you thought I'd sold Grandma's necklace forever?" Sarah asked, touching the sapphire at her throat. "You looked so broken that morning." "Because I thought I'd lost the last piece of her," I admitted. "I didn't know she'd left me so much more. A plan, a path, a chance to save you." "Save us," Robert corrected. "The whole family was sick, just in different ways. Margaret saw that." The children ran ahead to explore other headstones, their laughter bright against cemetery solemnity. We followed slowly, Sarah linking her arm through mine. "I paid Jennifer back last month," she said. "The final installment, with interest like I promised." She cried, said she never expected to see it. "But you kept your word." "All my words now. No more lies, not even small ones. Do you know how exhausting honesty is at first, having to admit when you're struggling instead of pretending everything's fine?" "Your mother called it terminal truthfulness during her illness," I remembered. "Said dying taught her lies were too expensive, even kind ones." We walked past familiar names, people who'd shared our neighborhood, our lives. The Castellano section was notably absent. They'd lost everything: freedom, assets, reputation. The very things they'd threatened in others, stripped away by justice, Margaret had orchestrated from beyond. "Dad." Sarah stopped walking, facing me directly. "There's something I need to tell you, something good." I waited, recognizing her nervous excitement. "The foundation board wants me to take over as director, run the Margaret Reynolds Recovery Fund full-time, help design interventions, work with families, build the kind of support system Mom created for me." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely thrilled. "You'd be perfect." "But it means accessing her journals, her plans, everything she wrote about me during those final months. Understanding her process. Are you okay with that?" I considered it. Margaret's private thoughts about our daughter's addiction, the pain she'd hidden even from me. But transparency was our new currency, truth, our only foundation. She'd want you to learn from her work, I decided. Turn pain into purpose. That's very Margaret. We collected the children and headed home for Sunday dinner, a tradition restored. The dining room table that had hosted confrontation now welcomed celebration. Sarah helped me cook, following Margaret's recipes, but adding her own touches. Evolution, not just repetition. "Tell us the necklace story again," Sophie demanded, over dessert, never tiring of family lore. Sarah and I exchanged glances silently, negotiating which version. The full truth would come later, when they were old enough to understand addiction, betrayal, redemption. For now, they got the adventure story. Hidden compartments and secret keys, FBI agents and captured villains, a grandmother's love protecting her family, like magic. And the necklace brought everyone back together, Sophie concluded with satisfaction. Like a fairy tale. "Better than a fairy tale," her brother corrected with 8-year-old wisdom. "Fairy tales aren't real. This happened to our actual family." After dinner, while Robert helped the children with homework, Sarah and I cleaned dishes side by side. Comfortable domestic rhythm, hard-won and precious. "I dream about her sometimes," Sarah said quietly, hands deep in soapy water. "Not nightmares anymore. Good dreams. She's healthy, laughing, telling me about some elaborate scheme she's planning. I wake up feeling like she visited." "Maybe she did," I suggested. "Your mother never let little things like death stop her from taking care of her family." Sarah laughed, the sound free and genuine. "Remember when she convinced the hospital to let her keep her jewelry during chemo, said the necklace was medicinal. Told them it contained her heart medication," I recalled. Technically true from a certain perspective. We finished the dishes, Sarah carefully drying Margaret's china, treating each piece like treasure. Everything in our home had weight, now significance. We'd learned the cost of carelessness, the value of attention. "Frank Morrison called yesterday," Sarah mentioned. "He's writing a book about the case, wants to interview us." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd think about it. The story could help people, but it's ours, you know. Our pain, our journey. I don't want it sensationalized." "Your mother would say the story was never just ours," I reflected. "Every family wrestling with addiction sees themselves in our struggles. Sharing it might be the final part of her plan." Sarah nodded slowly. Creating a roadmap for other families, like she did for us, but bigger. The evening wound down with board games and laughter. Sophie beat everyone at Monopoly, her brother graciously bankrupt Robert, playfully accusing her of cheating. Normal family chaos, background music of healing. As they prepared to leave, Sarah pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said simply, "for not giving up, for following Mom's plan even when it hurt, for visiting every week during treatment, for believing I could change." "Thank your mother," I deflected. "She's the one who refused to let us surrender." "I do," Sarah smiled. "Every day. But you're the one who stayed, who chose hope when evidence suggested otherwise. That's its own kind of love." After they left, I sat in my study surrounded by the documentation of our journey. Folders of evidence became archives of redemption. The necklace rested on my desk, catching lamplight like captured stars. I thought about the call I'd received that morning from Agent Williams. Another family trapped by gambling debts, another parent desperate for help. She wondered if I'd consult Cher Margaret's methodology, create new safety nets for other falling children. Of course I would. It's what Margaret would do, what she did do with her final months. Transform personal pain into collective healing, individual tragedy into shared triumph. I picked up the necklace, feeling its familiar weight. The secret compartment was empty now, but I imagined filling it with new messages. Notes of forgiveness, promises kept, chips marking clean days. A different kind of treasure worth more than any sapphire. 2 years since betrayal shattered our family. 2 years of rebuilding brick by painful brick. We weren't the same family Margaret had left behind. We were stronger, welded together by truth instead of comfortable lies. Her final gift more valuable than any jewelry. The phone rang. Sarah already home. "Dad, I just wanted to say goodnight, and I love you. I love you too, sweetheart." Simple words, but weighted with everything we'd survived. Love that looked like consequences. Love that built elaborate traps. Love that refused to let go even from beyond the grave. I hung up and opened my laptop, beginning to write. Our story, Margaret's legacy, a handbook for families drowning in addiction's undertow. The cursor blinked, waiting for words. "My wife died 2 years before her body stopped breathing," I typed. "Killed not by cancer but by our daughter's betrayal. This is the story of how she came back to life long enough to save us all." Outside, spring rain began falling, washing the world clean for tomorrow's growth. Margaret's roses would bloom soon, prairie flowers she'd coaxed from stubborn soil. Living proof that beautiful things could grow in unlikely places, with enough patience, enough love, enough refusal to surrender. I wrote late into the night telling our truth. Sometimes that's all we can do. Bear witness, share, wisdom, offer hope to strangers navigating their own dark waters. Margaret knew that. It's why she spent her last months building bridges we're still crossing, leaving maps we're still following, planting seeds we're still tending. Her love didn't end with death. It just changed form, became safety nets, and second chances, FBI operations, and family dinners recovered addicts helping others recover. Love as verb, not noun. Love as legacy. The necklace glowed in lamplight, keeper of secrets, witness to redemption. Margaret always said real jewelry wasn't about the gems, but the stories they carried. She was right as usual. This sapphire had seen us at our worst, and best held proof of betrayal and blueprints for salvation. Now it would see us heal day by day, truth by truth, together. The greatest gift she ever gave us, hidden in plain sight against her heart. Have you ever discovered that a loved one was planning something profound for your family, even in their darkest moments? What would you do if someone's final act of love was designed to save the very person who had hurt them most? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the complex ways families navigate addiction and redemption, Please like and subscribe to hear more stories of hope and healing. Share this with someone who might need to hear that recovery is possible, that love sometimes wears the disguise of consequences, and that the deepest betrayals can become the foundation for the strongest rebuilds. Thank you for joining me on this journey through my family's darkest chapter and brightest redemption. May you find your own hidden treasures in the places you least expect them.